Jaquelyn Landgraf, thanks for coming. I'm just kidding. That was on purpose.
You've been like practicing that all week.
No. Thanks for doing the podcast, Jaquelyn Landgraf.
You're welcome.
Good to see you. Even though I see you every day, pretty much.
I know. Almost every day now. We used to be more.
Used to be 7 days a week? No.
It feels like it was 7 days a week, and now I feel like we're at a good 3 to 4 days a week in person.
How's the coffee?
It's good, thank you.
Espresso?
Dodgers. Is it espresso?
Nespresso. Yeah.
Nespresso.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoy it. It's like second cup of the day.
So we run the Elysian together.
Hi, it's us.
Yeah.
Hello.
The face of corporate theater.
Yeah,
that's our inside joke because it's like it's the most
so
non-corporate
bohemian,
place.
Yeah. Yes, we are the artistic director and managing director of the very rad, electric Elysian Theater.
Yeah, with 7 days a week programming, 2 shows a night, Clown Central.
At least 2 shows a night. Jeez, sometimes it's 3, even more, because now we have our second space, a kind of cool raw space next door where we're trying to kind of have more happenings.
Soon to be 21 shows a week.
Oh my God. I know.
It's pretty epic to be able to do that kind of turnover.
It is. I was actually just thinking about that on my drive over for some other reason. I was just like, wow, there's so much foot traffic. And I feel like it took us a little bit of time where we were just like, of course, like there's so much foot traffic. We really need to like up our game around cleaning and thinking about like how to manage the storage spaces and how to manage all the nooks and crevices to like accommodate for what on average, how many people are treading through there a week?
I guess it's like 300 a day, right?
Mm-hmm. And also you and I have said many times, like, based on the places that we have, run or been in before work-wise, it's like the Elysian was so unique to us where it's a late night theater, obviously, but it starts at like 10 in the morning. It really does feel like you have like people have to run and tend to the space starting at 10 a.m.
There was a water pallet delivery they called. I don't know if I should be answering calls like while we're recording. That'd be kind of fun.
I think I should be. Yeah, I think one of us need to be.
Yeah.
I put my phone on airplane, so you have to then
so I'll receive real-time calls and look at it.
But more than like water pallet and stuff, which is part of the everyday facility stuff, like we just have a lot of like rehearsals and workshops and classes and like, things going on in the theater, which is, I think, unique to a space that usually like would open at, 5 o'clock and the front of house comes in and starts getting the space ready for the night. But we have to really hand over the baton from like daytime to nighttime.
Yeah, it's like
not hand over the baton and just stay there for 16 hours.
Right, or just hope for the best. Yeah. It is kind of like, it's like a rehearsal space during the day and then a theater at night. It's definitely not it's not like a restaurant or a bar or something that's only open in the evening.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like some spaces that I think would then like run later, where it is a bar, it's a venue and a bar, it's not that, but it's still like without being that, it's still, people are leaving at 1 a.m.
Yeah. And how much did you know about clown before the Elysian?
Good question. Well, I went to school for acting. And so was
that a dramatic pause before acting? Did you learn that?
Cool. We're like it's built in.
Yeah.
Like I have a BFA in acting. Like my actual.
It was actually better the second time.
My diploma has like a large space on it before.
Is this Jacquelyn? Then you gotta flip the page. Landgraf.
Yeah, it's a pregnant pause.
Yeah.
Filled with hopes and dreams. But in my acting program, like a conservatory program, we had clown. That was like part of our foundation. And my clown teacher actually did intersect with a lot of like the world, like our clown friends here now, but was teaching us like a much more traditional, what I now know, like thanks to coming to the Elysian, like the quote unquote red-nosed clown, which is kind of like the foundational French traditional clowning kind of coming out of Commedia dell'arte, which is not French, it's Italian. But like, I learned that stuff. and was really in the performance art scene in New York. And so I was in a company called the Neo-Futurists for 8 years, and we never would have called ourselves clown, but we were doing like, we were doing immersive theater. We were doing like quite mischievous guerrilla theater a lot of times. We were trying to like push genre boundaries and things like that. And it was also like very much about like telling the truth and having some kind of particular function in, like a little microcosm of society. So I feel like the mix of kind of the more physical clown training and experimental theater training I got in college, plus working with the Neo-Futurists, kind of prepped me for what I discovered is happening in LA right now, which is so exciting, and what is really happening at the Elysian, which is this kind of like nouveau, awesome performance art clown thing.
So fun. So you were kind of like in the clown world
I was
before
in the
it was
performance
called
art
world?
experimental theater world in New York, like very much so.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, and that's not exactly the equivalent, but I think there's like a lot of intersections there and it's more, maybe more physical than some of the things are more physical. But yeah, so I feel like it was like adjacent, but I love that there's like a more official, like prominent clown community that is like still striving to find and articulate exactly what their aesthetic is and exactly how to describe it. And I love that. And I think even in New York, like, 'cause so many of my buddies are still in New York and performing in New York, like, it's not exactly happening over there. Like I feel like everybody's like, whoa, like what's going on? What's going on in LA? Like something else is going on.
Yeah, they're talking
in LA.
about like, what is it? Like, yeah.
And there is an overlap, I think.
It's kind of like when there's like an app and it's like, wait, how do you do reels? Oh, you got to click here. It's like this thing. It's like right there, but like people feel like it's inaccessible.
I don't know how to do reels.
See?
But like, like the Spiegel World Vegas, I feel like it's a mix between,
I don't know Spiegel.
like they're like the people who did Absinthe and Opium and
the drugs.
Yeah. Looks like.
Those are the shows?
They have those shows. Like, do you know, it's like there's
No.
famously like these shows that have been popping up in Vegas.
Carrot Top? Is that clown?
No. Well, I'm sure he's a kind of clown and has referred to himself as clown, but that's not our kind of clown. But there, it's like, it's a mix of vaudeville, performance art, like experimental, like Grotowski theater, like there's just a bunch of like a big mix of things, but also it's very, I don't know, I say to people, like, to me, it feels like the natural energy that is coming out of our years of the pandemic. Like, I really think there's a movement happening.
Chad was just on the podcast yesterday.
Saying that?
And he said it came out of the pandemic for him because he would do Clown Zoo during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And that was like the genesis of him really like starting these shows like Stand Up and Clown, which you were great on, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. I, just took my medicine.
Yeah, it was amazing. And also the new show with Rory Scovel.
Yeah.
The Chad and Rory Save Comedy.
I kept saying in New York, like, because I just moved from, not just moved, but I moved from New York to LA right before the pandemic. And I was pretty steeped in like the theater scene there and like kind of a few different parts of the theater scene. But it was kind of like, where's the avant-garde? Like you'd heard so much, like, especially being in New York, studying in New York, like you'd heard so much about like all these ensembles and companies that started, especially in the late 70s through the 80s and then early 90s in New York. And like that was like a real time for the East Village, for like, this quite modern like theater, like new forms and stuff like that. Music, yeah, tons of stuff, I think, across the board. And I feel like it didn't so much feel like like in 2019 when I left New York that we were in the middle of like some movement or something like that, but I think that LA is so ripe for it. I feel like it, partly because a huge part because of the pandemic, and also like economically, it's such a bizarre time. We're like kind of in the brink of a recession. There's so much talent here. There's so much like, there's so much energy. There's so much like, unused energy and angst, like that it feels like And there's real estate, you
Yeah.
know, like, and any
I was
art
just gonna say
movement
that.
needs real estate.
There's
and
an
like,
area of town where people can
Yeah.
go to and feel like they can affect change.
Yeah. And even, I mean, we're dealing with daily at the Elysian, you know, like we're trying to really put in sustainable practices and stuff. But like Elysian is like a touch and go space, like every great art space is. Like it's just touch and go. And like we got to figure out how to pay the bills. But like it also had enough wiggle room because of various things where like it could kind of dip for a little bit and still survive for a few months, where I do feel like just knowing what it was like in New York, like you can't, if you have a bad few months, like you're just,
It's over.
It's over, you know,
Yeah.
like, and so anyway, that's all good for art. So I feel like there's a movement that is, especially coming out of the end, I'm sure Chad talked about this, that's like craving connection, craving something that is like more in your face, craving something that is communal and ensemble and anti-authoritarian and like, you know, kind of like mischievous, I keep saying, but it's like not the best word for it, like subversive.
Yeah. Different.
Like, but also like counterculture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he a lot of what he's doing is pushing back the norms of comedy and building a certain tension in the room that's like just approaching this. It's kind of like you're getting to the same goal, which is laughs, but
Yeah.
he's just doing it in a completely different starting point.
It's really daring the audience, though, you know, like,
Yeah.
and I think that was like in, you know, in more traditional theater, like there's so much talk about, you know, an audience feeling safe and an audience like, you know, being invited into things, which I think is obviously an important conversation. But I feel like the clown movement is like addressing these things in just like a more extreme and like just visceral way, where it's
Yeah.
like what does an audience want, and like what can they tolerate, and what can they take, and what can you kind of invite them, like what kind of playfulness and risque behavior can you invite them into in a world that is ultimately safe, you know, but like it's like through the duration of this time that we have together, we're going to see like how far we can take our play.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about the Elysian?
Oh. That way I have lots of money. I don't know if anyone has that conception. I don't know. Are there misconceptions about the Elysian?
Maybe there's none.
I like right now I feel like well, I think that part of the, you know, something I'm interested in is just making sure that people know that it's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Which is really not what you would expect of a 7-night-a-week comedy venue, you know? And I think I'm only saying this, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm saying this as like a relative newbie to LA who is not steeped in like comedy venues, but more definitely come from like a nonprofit theater world, where I feel like it's not like your typical comedy venue where it's just all about like, you know.
Yeah, whoever can put butts in seats.
Who can put butts in
Yeah.
the seats, and you know, and everything is ticket revenue or bar revenue or like 2 drink minimum, you know, like that's how you're doing it. Like we have a mission, and that mission is pulling together a lot of different elements. Like it's pulling together the work that we're showcasing in our like 7 nights a week of the machine running, but also it is like very much expanding out to fostering emerging artists and helping like develop an ethos, like develop a community, develop like a kind of value and aesthetic around creating new work and
Yeah.
creating ensemble work and devising things together and like being more physical, being multidisciplinary, you know, if possible. And so I do feel like that's the kind of work of now. I think it's a really exciting time. I think it's a really natural time for an organization like the Elysian, where it's like 2 years in, it had immediate, like out of the gate excitement around it for many reasons, including just like good timing, good location, like a real yearning for a place like that in LA. And so now I just feel like we have to kind of more fully spread the word that it's a nonprofit, which does, I think, change the audience relationship to a space a little bit, but I think it also really changes like an artist relationship to the space, where like hopefully they're able to feel more like a home. Hopefully they're able to invest in the values of the space. Hopefully they're able to like kind of share in the community building of like how we get sustainable support, you know, but also because it's nonprofit, it means like every dollar that comes in like kind of goes back out to expanding what the Elysian
Does it ever?
does it ever? Does it ever? Yeah, let's get less water for the people.
More water just delivered. Yeah, because those like big initiatives we have, which is like the Spaghetti Festival, which is like 2 weeks of new works.
Yeah, 2 weeks of new work, but like a month and a half of like really, you know, kind of helping these 10 or so artists that we're inviting into the festival, like take their freshly formed, newly minted idea and like have deadlines that then turn it into a live performance, and helping scaffold the process of that, and helping like give them resources, some financial resources, but also just more like, you know, workshops and space, you know, all an artist needs. Like artists need just a few things, you know, they need space and time and money
and audience
and like sometimes like other good ideas to rub against, you know, like, so I feel like I keep that in mind all the time, and that like in moments where it's like, oh no, I wish the Elysian could offer like more financial support. It's like, well, okay, what we might not be able to offer yet in financial support, we can try to tip the balance into like, you know,
stage time,
rehearsal time, feedback, you know, like introducing them to cool people that might be able to get them to a next step.
Yeah, it's also it's more than a new works festival. It's a never been performed ever festival. So it's not
just
a
new ideas festival.
Yeah, so it's like the first time it's been on stage.
Yeah, and I was really, you know, we inherited this festival, you know, like it was one of the many cool things that we inherited, and it's such a good festival. I feel like it's such a beautiful, it's just a beautiful prompt, I think, for artists, which is like, what is your most radical new idea that has never taken shape before, you know, and now you have like less than 2 months to really bring it to fruition in front of what's, you know, this time around was like almost a full house every night, you know, like, and then we got to celebrate the artist and their ideas afterwards. And we were really encouraging them to network with each other. We were really encouraging them to use our space, like to promote their show and to like make the marketing up into the show, make the tech design up into the show, all part of the creative process, and like, you know, not see it as just like, here's our idea and then we're going to compartmentalize like what it means to market our idea and compartmentalize what it means to like stage our idea. But like, it's all one thing. To me, I feel like a place like the Elysian, in promoting independent artists, like you really want to promote, especially on the fringes of Hollywood, it's like you want to promote the idea of like being self-actualized and self-competent as a creator. That it's like, yeah, a venue like the Elysian, especially like the Elysian, that is a nonprofit that I think exists to help artists, you know, but most venues are not like that, you know, like, and so you just have to know that that's the truth of the business. And so then be the person who can, you know, really translate your idea, and that through the translation of that idea, that's not just coming out in the art itself, but also in the attraction of the art itself, you know, so that it does help sustain you personally as an artist, and that you're not waiting by the phone for somebody to either choose your work or to give you the backing to do it, but you have the resources to, as best possible, produce your own work.
Yeah, and it also, we got not only the eyes on these projects, but a lot of people got representation. So they
representation.
So that's like some real old Hollywood.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen very often. Where you get to do something, people see it and they're like, "I want you,"
and organically, you know, like I just feel like it's so like the dreaded showcase, you know, just makes everybody want to vomit. Like, and so it's like, this is not I mean, it's certainly like by definition showcasing someone's art, but it's like, no, this is like a really pulsing new idea and a real happening that we are seeing like people kind of flock to because we're interested in what new things are coming out. And if that's the, like, that should be what's attracting representation, or like people being like, whoa, like I want to hitch my wagon to this person who's full of ideas and can really deliver, you know, not like, here's my scene from Tennessee Williams. Like,
yeah.
come to my showcase.
Right. And you're picking someone whose art you believe in that really only got to be experienced in that moment.
Yeah.
Which is now a lot of art gets picked via like the audience you've built for yourself.
Yeah.
So it feels like in a way traditional Hollywood where it's like, I saw something great in you. Let's do this.
Yeah. I also feel like I felt really lucky in like my own coming up as an artist, because I was really encouraged even before college, but like certainly through college. Like I just feel like I had so many mentors who really saw me and also said to me like you just make sure that you can do all the things, you know. They were like it's probably not gonna, you're not gonna be the type of artist who's just gonna be like, I'm an actress and I'm showing up on the scene and like see my acting and let me go through the traditional route of like through this. They were like, make sure you know how to write your own work. Like you're also a director, direct these things, you know, like create new things, like try different art forms. I feel like people were always saying that to me. And so it just kind of organically happened where I was from the beginning producing my own stuff and other people's stuff and like writing and performing at the same time. And that was so helpful. And I think there was a period where I just took for granted that like I was taught that. So I think it's really good, especially in LA, to get that messaging out. It's definitely a better time, I think, than it was like in the 90s. You know, like you're not coming to LA and just mostly like sitting by the phone or checking your voicemail or whatever.
It's not going to ring.
No. Yeah. You can see, I mean, that's like what Netflix and streaming has really given us, like that. It's like, creators are being seen, you know, so much more than somebody who's just acting in something.
Totally. Do you instill that in the students you teach in your like drama for comedians or other classes?
I hope so. I feel like I've been really like, you know, such an essential part of my own path as an artist has been in tandem with teaching. Like I was really lucky. My mom is a public school teacher and she's an amazing mother, but also like an especially truly amazing teacher. And I've like, it's like making me emotional to think about it. Like I got to see her young. She was like, you know, what then was called gifted and talented teacher, but she had like a lot of students who just weren't actually thriving in a traditional setting. And so her whole MO was about like how to cater to different people's intelligences, you know, and like bring out their specific kind of brilliance and do alternative lesson plans and promote creativity. So she was such a good teacher. So I think I always had that just kind of naturally in me. But then when I was graduating from college, I got asked almost right out of college pretty early, like to start training to teach. So I was the youngest teacher at NYU at 23. And it was like...
You were teaching at 23?
I started teaching at 23.
Wow. You must have had lots of students older than you.
I did. Because I was teaching in like two programs, in like both the NYU program and what they called like the conservatory program. And I had a lot of older students, and I was prepared for as much as one could be prepared. You know, they were like, my boss was just like, don't tell anybody your age.
It's ageism in the reverse.
You know, and like, I definitely was like, well, it was good that I was tall.
Yeah.
It's always like, you know, you're tall and people are like, oh,
yeah, she's
older.
Or I'll listen to the tall person. Yeah.
Something like that. You know, there is like a natural bias, I think, that I was like, yeah, probably part of it is being tall. But also I was really trained pretty meticulously. And prepared enough, but like definitely it was fucking scary. And especially like in what I was teaching at the Atlantic Theater, which was historically like it was founded by David Mamet and William H. Macy. And it was like kind of a patriarchy, you know, like, so I was this like 23-year-old gal going in and teaching what was kind of like like roll up your sleeves and act, you know, like don't like bullshit. kind of like it's a tough like acting aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's not
like an Al Pacino.
No, not Al Pacino. It's not like The Method, which is like, like go into your feelings. It's like, what's the script say? Like
okay.
play a fucking objective. Like get to work. Like, wipe your feet at the door. Stop crying.
Hit your mark. Know your lines.
I just remember my very first class was like Will Ferrell's brother. And he was like 45, and I was like 23. And I was just like, oh God, and it was just like all these guys like with their arms crossed looking at me.
But was this like, why are they in NYU?
They weren't the Atlantic. So
it was
NYU,
Atlantic. Okay, got it. Yeah.
The Atlantic, but NYU does this interesting thing with all their undergraduate actors where they basically outsource 6 great theaters or acting schools in the city, and they send their undergraduate they basically typecast their undergraduate actors, and that's where they go do their conservatory training. So like NYU has a contract with the Atlantic Theater, and NYU has a contract with like Stella Adler, all these different theaters and acting schools in the city. And so if you're an NYU student, you're like, for the first 2 years, you're learning this like super specific acting technique. And you're learning different ones. Like you might be in one studio and I'm in a different studio. And though we're like getting the same degree at the end, we've been taught like really differently, just based on like who you are as an artist.
Right. Or who you've been taught by.
Yeah. But also like, because I do the auditions for incoming NYU students, and it's really intense. Like, especially like I have a 15-year-old in my life now, and I'm like, or 16-year-old, pardon me. And, it's like these 17-year-olds, 18, maybe 18-year-olds auditioning for NYU, and like they're getting placed in the studio that people like the auditor feels is best for them, which really is like a deciding factor
in their life.
Yeah. And I remember, this is what's funny. Like I remember I did my audition in Chicago when I was like 17 and a half. And I remember the auditioner said to me, she was like, you're an experimental theater person. Like you should go to the experimental theater wing. And that scared the shit out of me, because I was just like a good Catholic girl from the south side of Chicago that went to an all-girls school, and I didn't really know what that meant. So I was like, I don't know. I don't think so. Like
I'm traditional.
Like, I think so. And like cut to like me running the Elysian,
yeah.
like cut to like I
they
absolutely
knew.
Was an experimental theater person. And like I did my first 2 years of training in like a much more traditional place. And then I went to the experimental theater wing, and they knew, but they were like, they knew, and I feel like I do kind of know, like when I'm watching, it's like, yeah, you've got the experimental thing in you, you've got this in you.
Does it ever go wrong though?
Oh, certainly. Absolutely.
Like you just picked the total wrong choice?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes,
yeah.
I've seen that happen too. But
I'm sure you can move. Be like, hey.
It's hard to move.
Oh, really?
You're kind of destined.
Is it thriving or dying? Like going to school for acting?
Oh, whoa. Intense question.
Not like taking a class, but like getting a degree in theater. Is that... I guess it's hard to answer.
I think it's a really good question, though. I think it's a question that everybody should be asking themselves. I think it's a question that's like wrapped into like this big question of higher education and how insanely expensive it is to begin with. Like I was a kid from, the South Side who had a limited experience and like applied to NYU as a real long shot. And when I got in, my parents were like took a huge gamble, and both them and I took out substantial loans that we're both going to be paying off till we die. And partly because we were really sold this idea of like, this is the best thing to do for your life, your like artistic path ahead. I don't know. I loved it. And I don't regret that I went there, and I don't regret paying my loans every month, like I feel like it was worth it for me. But like now, like it's, not just where I went to school, but most schools, it's like $40,000 a year more than when I went there already, a year,
Yeah.
So it was like already the biggest stretch we could conceive of when I was going to school in the early 2000s, like, and
now it's probably cheap relative.
I don't know. I mean, it's just so insane.
Yeah.
And also I do remember like the truth of it is that like I really my parents and I really were like, we want to do what's best. You know, obviously, like you want to do what's best for your kid. You feel like this is an opportunity I can't pass up. But then I remember like a month before my graduation, they brought in an agent, like a really big agent, you know, to talk to my class or whatever. And somebody
and now you tell his clients no at the Elysian.
No, but someone, you know, like some student was like, what is like the single best piece of advice you could give us as we're about to graduate from NYU? And this agent, bless her, she really said it guilelessly, but she was like, go to grad school. And everybody, I like watched as my classmates like diligently wrote down like in their notebooks, go to grad school. And my stomach like dropped from under me. And I was like, and maybe this was naive, but I was like raising my hand. I was like, I can't believe that you're telling us this. I was like,
you're about to be done.
My parents bet their whole life on this.
Yeah.
Like truly, you know, and this was supposed to be it. Like this was supposed to be the school, you know, like, and I do feel like you gotta, as much as I believe in school, as much as I believe in education, I really believe in training. Like I really do. I think
rigor
like,
is one of the.
I believe really strongly in rigor and like having your own toolbox, and it can be different. And I think that creates excellent art. Like, but I think you've got to be careful of like, you know, not just being like, I'm going to go to school for the rest of my life, or I'm going to buy into like, it's going to cost me this much, you know, to be able to train and get rigor. It doesn't need to be. So it's complicated for me because I loved my experience in college. I feel really grateful. I feel like I can draw a direct line from the experiences I had in college, the people I met in college, my professors in college, the artists, especially like the artists and mentors I had, I feel like very much are the reason that I am who I am today and where I am today.
Having not gone to NYU or gone through the program, I would surmise that it's still very great experience.
It's amazing.
It's still
it is, yeah.
getting top-notch teaching.
And
but
to
like
be in New York,
they can only control that.
Yes.
They can't control the outside. So once you get onto the world, even through the 4 years of the program, the world's constantly changing, right?
Yeah.
So what they're spitting out I think in all degrees now, you like think about if you're going to school for computer science and you come out and ChatGPT is coding now.
Absolutely. You just don't know.
You just don't know.
And I do think, I'm like already like, oh my gosh, I do want to make sure that I'm like, you know, promoting going to college. I just actually also think I just don't want to be naive. It's like, it's a really complicated decision. And I think you have to put so much faith in the student themselves, because a university is a university. Do you know what I mean? Like ultimately, like and a place like NYU is so big. Lots of these colleges are just so big that like the student themselves has to have the wherewithal to like really make the most of these 4 years.
Totally.
And if that student can do that, then it's a great place for them. But I also really, and especially as somebody who taught freshmen for years and years and years, I also understand if you're like 17 and you're like, I don't know who I am. I don't really know what I want to do. I don't know if I have an aesthetic. Like, you just don't want to waste 3 years. You know, it's like, it's just too high stakes, I think.
Isn't that all life is too high stakes now?
But the money of it, like if you have the money, fine, then it's not high stakes. But like if you're like, you know, if you're going to spend 4 years of college, not really.
But time is high stakes. Like you could do 4 years of accounting and be like, I hate this, or like 4 years of law school and be like,
yeah.
One of the things that struck me is that like one of the law teachers at one school, I forgot, was like, hey, the amount of kids who go get a law degree and have never set foot in a law firm.
Yeah.
He's like, that's just insane.
Yeah.
He's like, go there for a day and like they should have like an intern program. Do you like this? And
that's what I think. I think that's all I really want to promote, like, is take a gap year or take 2.
Yeah.
Because also I would say as a teacher of freshmen, everybody who came in a year later, like almost across the board, like anybody who took a gap year or anybody who was like transferring from another place, like there's a real difference that you can see between somebody just, especially now, because I think everything has changed so much, you know, like high school has changed, like test systems have changed, like there's been a social shift, you know, so I do feel like I'm not talking from on high and I'm not that old, but like a 17-year-old now, I think is kind of different. like in a slightly different place than a 17-year-old like 20 years ago. And so I just think like take a year and see, take a year, go out in the world, go to court, like go to,
or look it up now. I'm sure like the amount of YouTube videos on everything now, be like, what is it? You could probably type in, what is it like to work at a law firm? And someone's created like a 15-minute video.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What were you like at 18 before you like set down this path? Like, were you like, I'm doing auditions in Chicago, I'm doing commercials, and now I want to be an actress? Or like, where were you that led you on this path?
I feel my people who know me like joke that I have like always been the exact same. Like you can see like when I'm a baby, it's just like, yeah, like I'm like one of those babies who like looked just like I do right now. You know how sometimes you're like, that's you as a kid? Can
I send me a photo and I'll cut it into the video here?
I will. It's just like environment changes, but I feel like I've kind of mostly been this, but I think, and I very much feel like a kindredness in this at the Elysian, because I was like a Chicago theater gal, and Chicago theater has like a long ethos of ensemble and devised creation and theater companies, and so I like luckily was really exposed to that. Like, when I was in 8th grade, my parents were just cool. Like they were just the kind of parents who trusted me, and they were like, you can go out, like you don't have a curfew, And so like I had some older friends who were in the theater. They were all like really good people, and they were just like theater nerds, but they were also, like good theater nerds, like kind of like lost children, and like, and like this older boy took me to the north side of Chicago to see an 11:30 p.m. show called Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind by the Neo-Futurists. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? And then I like got to join like, many years, just a few years later, really out of college. Like one of my first jobs out of college was bartending, and I was at the bar working, and this guy like was sitting at the bar, and he was like blah 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 Neo-Futurists, and I was like, oh my God, do you know the Neo-Futurists? I'm like obsessed with them.
He's like,
I'm from
I am
Chicago.
the Neo-Futurists.
He was like, I am the Neo-Futurists. I'm the managing director of a new New York Neo-Futurist company, and we're holding auditions next week. Why don't you come?
Wow.
And I did, and then I spent the next 8 years in the first like iteration of the New York Neo-Futurists. So.
And if you didn't get that job, bartending.
Totally. I know. I was like doing like, 90 jobs right out of college, and like that just happened to be behind the bar like on a good night, and that like sealed my fate. But like I was a kid who was like, I started doing community theater at 11 at a place called Struggles Dinner Playhouse. Where
sounds about right.
The artistic, quote unquote, artistic director, was the lead in every single musical and play that she produced there, and chain smoked through the entire play.
Beret?
Like not a beret, but like would literally like cast herself as the narrator in like Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, or like cast herself as, like, other like Maria in Sound of Music, and smoke through the play.
This is not good, right?
No, she would like in the middle, like finish a song and like have it choreographed that she would like walk over to the piano, where somebody was like playing the piano, and like stub out her cigarette and light a new one. And there was like all these people, all different ages, like adults, like older people, much older people, little kids, like everybody would just come. There were like rodents all around. We would order, it was a dinner theater, quote unquote. So we would like order catering from like Papa Joe's down the street. It was crazy. But we would put on new shows like every week. We would learn a new musical like in a week.
A musical?
Like a full musical. We would just like learn it and then
with the music?
It was insane. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a crazy, disgusting, kind of amazing place where like there just wasn't that many things on the south side of Chicago. So somehow if you wanted to do theater, you would find your way through there somehow,
Yeah.
Like, and
there was a place like that here that Tarantino used to talk about there. He would learn or went acting school with, and the person would put themselves in every play.
Oh, yeah.
The lead of every play.
Oh, yeah.
So this must have been a thing. It's like, well,
sure,
I'm just going to start my own school, and I'll just do productions and I'll be the lead every time.
I mean, it was insane. Like, I'm sure she never paid taxes, you know, like it was like all very suspect. Like, and it was like, I think a lot of adults who were like, you know, going to do their community theater and like having affairs with each other, you know, like, and then like kids just like innocently being like, I want to be a star, you know, like
next to a rat.
Totally. So I was just like, yeah, life in the theater. So I started there and then did lots of anything. I did any theater that was available to me, and then high school, and then I went to college. But like also I was going to see Chicago theater, and mainly I was going to see the Neo-Futurists, I was going to see Steppenwolf, and I would go to the free shows that Second City did afterwards. And so it would be like, you know, they would do their main stage shows, but then after the performances, they would do this like, you could just come at that moment and watch them improvise for free. And it was the late 90s, so the people that I would be constantly seeing on stage at Second City were Tina Fey and Rachel Dratch.
Oh, wow.
And like that cohort. And I didn't know, you know, I was just like, wow, improv is good, you know? Like,
and that was the peak.
Yeah, it's all been downhill. So without me knowing, I was getting like Steppenwolf and like Second City and the Neo-Futurists were also a trifecta of three really different forms that were all really, really high quality and kind of in the moment of like the best of, like in the late 90s, like the Steppenwolf ensemble was Laurie Metcalf and John Malkovich and Gary Sinise, you know, and like Tina Fey and Rachel Dratch at Second City with their people. And then the Neo-Futurists were so awesome. So I think I think I just got lucky that I was watching kind of these amazing ensembles, and that shaped me so much.
Do you think that's happening now at the Elysian? Like this,
I hope
people
so,
coming through,
man,
they
I
could
hope
be
so.
like, look at all these clowns, and they'll be naming those names
Absolutely.
like
Oh my
5 to 10
God.
years from now, and be like, I can't believe that. Like I mean, it kind of already happened with Natalie too when she got her Netflix. It's like they kind of really put a whole thing on it.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel that about Natalie and Chad. You know, like I just feel like you can already feel.
Yeah, Courtney,
like,
Peruso.
Yeah,
and...
like they're just something is happening, you know, and they're so brilliant, and they are doing something that is so interesting, and they're really working so hard to think about like, you know, what's next. I feel like they're really, I mean, they're just being their brilliant selves, but I feel like they're also just constantly working. And I think that's what I learned from Chicago. It's like when you have a community, when you have a cohort, and there's like an aesthetic forming that kind of like creates some language or not rules. I mean, especially for clown, like they're just trying to break the rules. But when there is something where you're like, okay, I kind of understand the format, and we're all looking at each other and admiring each other, and there's like healthy competition, you know, like, and there's a competition, but they're also supporting each other and directing each other. So there's a natural aesthetic forming, which I always think is, in my experience, creates the best kind of art. Like you just can't replicate what happens when a group of people are working with a similar set of tools.
From the bottom up. Yeah.
And consistently, you know, like, it's just so different when artists are able to work collectively and consistently. So I absolutely think so, that it's happening at the Elysian. I hope it continues to. And I have no doubt that, I mean, people already are like, oh my God, I saw Natalie Palamides like do her early iterations of Nate. And so 20 years from now, they're going to be like, I remember the days where I would see Rory Scovel and Chad doing this wild thing every Monday night.
I mean, you can already kind of see like Rory's HBO special was done at the Elysian a lot. You know, we have like Rami there. We just had Gerard Carmichael. Like those are the bigger names. But then you have Courtney, and then you have Nat. They're like, I think they're going to look back at this time and be like, how did all that happen?
Yeah.
In this one little area in this short window of time.
Yeah. And I think it happens, you know, because like, you know, if you build it, they will come. Like there's space for it to happen. Like there was just space and time for it to happen. And a place like the Elysian, again, where it's like it can contain a lot of programming, you know, like we can do two shows a night, and we're trying to figure out like, you know, how the logistics of doing as much more, you know, and so that's really nice. You know, at most nonprofit theaters, there's a season. And so you're doing 4 or 5 things a year, you know, and then you're like building around those things, but it's mostly those things. And I feel like the Elysian is really unique in that, again, there's kind of like the constant pulse of the revolving door of like 2 shows a night. But then that leaves room for things to, come from that, like a 1 show thing can then evolve into a several night thing or a once a month thing, or then inspire us to create some development or initiative around it.
Yeah. And we have like the word clown, which is associated very tightly with the Elysian. And I did ask Chad this, but like,
Yeah, what did he say?
Are we close? Like, are we at risk of clown becoming like disco? Like being like, it's the hot
Or we
thing.
burn all of our records.
And no, yeah, it's the hot thing. And then people are like, oh, then they want to distance themselves from it.
No, I don't know. I mean,
Chad gave the most clown
what did he
response,
say?
which is like, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's like, it's all going to burn to the ground. But I don't believe that. But I think because the word is so provocative and undefinable, it's kind of creates an excitement around it. I think if it was a word that was easily understood, the mystery would be gone. Like there's a mystery around it being not the best choice of word for what is actually happening on stage.
You also just like, it's kind of, like it feels crass to try and like define, like think about something while you're in the midst of it. Do you know what I mean? To like try and be like, I'm part of a movement, like, or like to see the future. It's like, I feel like we're in the belly of the whale of it, and it's just, and it's happening organically. And so to define like, what's the movement, I think is different. I do see like,
I was kind of saying less about the definition, but more about like,
no, but like to think about like a saturation point in the future.
I think while you're in it, you should look at it so that you don't repeat those mistakes. Because like disco became something that was underground and then it became overexploited, right? So like, and had it not, it might have had a longer last. But because it was kind of exploited and churned out and schlocky, it turned schlocky really quickly, it kind of burned out and died. So if you're in something that's great, you kind of want to protect it and be like, this is great. Like, let's not water it down. Let's not make it schlocky.
Yeah, I don't know enough about disco. But I do think like, it's interesting because like I learned a little bit about like IP, where it's like, like a movement, a genre of something like, like it's just obviously like, it's just of the world. Like, like you can't control an aesthetic. I think that's hard a lot of times, like I think
you absolutely can't.
Yeah, you can't.
But you can make choices that bring about its demise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think we're doing that.
God, I hope not. What if we were like,
we don't have the resources to do that, but like,
Well, I think more what I see and what I understand, and I think even like, with the neo-futurists at least, like I was a really early part of a like very specific aesthetic in New York, but we were like taking the baton from a company that had been in Chicago for a long time. But now like the neo-futurists have just been around, since the late 80s. And now there's like the Chicago contingent, the New York contingent, there's a San Francisco contingent. Like there's been a lot of ebbs and flows of different ensembles that have come through. There's been politics, there's been like, big ruptures, things like that. I think that just the more people that become involved, like I feel like what's really amazing, what's exciting, what certainly anybody I think would want to promote is like I think Chad should teach as many people as possible. I think as many people as possible should be exposed to Natalie's work. I feel like the supporting of young people who want to do work like Chad, like or Natalie or John Gilkey in the Idiot Workshop, or Amrita, like all these like cool people who have their own kind of particular thing around clown. Like the bigger it gets, people are just going to find their own little pockets of it. You know what I mean? And I think that sometimes that can feel like a distillation, and sometimes it is, but it's also just, I think, very natural, that it's like the bigger a community gets, the more it's going to split off into many different things. And I think that's okay.
It might not be able to die or grow that big until it gets a format that can capture what it is exists. I'm really curious to see like Courtney's special, which is a bit more of a one-woman show special. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to translate really well. But like a lot of these clown shows, it's like you kind of need to be in the room. Like to be
yeah.
like Rory and Chad's show, like if you're not there, it'd be hard to replicate.
But that is like, that's theater, you know, like
Yeah.
that's what I hope theater like remains, you know, that is it
And AI can't change
written
that.
in the wind. It
Yeah,
dies
yeah.
as it lives. Like,
Because
as-
AI can make a whole movie now almost with this new whatever.
Yeah.
But it can't create physical beings on the stage.
No, and it can't create the energy of the audience performer connection, you know, like it should I think theater should feel like an irreproducible event. And I think that the clowns that I admire at the Elysian and other places like really make that manifest, you know,
Yeah.
like it really does feel like if you missed that show that night, you really missed out on something
And that's what
special that's
stand-up
never
used
going to
to
happen
be.
again.
Before everyone started recording all of their sets all the time, it used to be like you had to be there.
Yeah.
It used to butt a little bit more up against theater.
But stand up is so verbal, you know, like it's so highly verbal.
But the experience of
Yeah,
it,
sure.
like it disappeared. Like if something crazy happened with the audience, like you had to be there.
Right,
Now they've
exactly.
recorded it, clipped it, and it's got 100,000 views.
I was watching from above last night, one of our shows, and they used Yonder, you know, which is
Yeah, the pocket pouch.
Yeah, the pocket pouch.
Which I love.
I love it. I just feel like I was saying to like our front of house staff afterwards, like even just kind of watching it from above, like watching the audience, knowing that there was no access to your own device. I don't know. There's just something that feels really nice. Like there's just something that feels like
should do it every night.
a greater presence, you know, like it just, I was like, no, this is lovely. It's lovely that everyone is really just here with each other, that there's no possibility of a technological disruption or distraction or.
What if we have a wall that's 130 little lockers to put your phones in and they charge for
Yeah,
you?
that'd be great. I would love it.
Yeah. It would take up the entire space, but
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like some clubs and venues that do Yonder always, like they're always, it's like, I love it. I mean, I love putting my phone in the pouch. I love the
Yeah,
experience.
you're doing a service to an audience, I think.
To yourself too.
Absolutely to yourself.
Like you
Yes.
have, your brain is like, when the phone's here, like you want to look at it.
Yeah, I know.
I have a little cookie jar that I put my phone in with a timer.
You do?
Yeah. And
You're
then
so disciplined.
I don't use it very
so
often.
you.
But when I do that, it's the best. I used to have a little burner phone that I could forward it to, but the burner died, so
Oh my
now
God.
I can't do that.
What it must be like to live like that.
Sans phone? You're not phone
No.
addicted like most people.
No, I mean, I feel like probably everybody. Like, I feel so the difference in my own level of concentration than it used to be. I miss my old self.
I miss my old self.
Yeah.
I started reading a book, and it took me like a week.
That-
It took me a week
I
to
know.
be able to, my brain to slow down enough to actually read like,
I know, I hate that.
yeah. And I'm like, whoa, this is bad. I was really freaked out.
I feel like the being the AD of the Elysian has by necessity I've had to become a better I've just had to become better with my inbox. I still have room to grow.
Yeah.
But like I am now so dependent on, like I live and die by my Google Calendar, and I have to have methods, which I've never, like I have an artist brain. Like it's kind of like a disaster to have, your spreadsheet guy, thank God. But the level of organization and kind of like the discipline of stuff. But I feel like with even that, it's like, okay, let's set it. I like that you set timers where you're like, I'm going to set a timer and I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to step away, and then you're going to eat your chicken and rice meal. And then you do it. Like Latif eats so many chicken and rice and spinach meals in a day.
I eat like a child because I make 3 of them.
I've
in
never
little
seen anything
containers.
like it.
Really?
No, I've never seen anything like it.
Like the amount of food I eat, or like the
Well, I feel like
discipline.
the discipline of it, like the discipline of it and the like clockwork of it, and like it makes sense of like the phone.
But
and the
I'm like
cookie jar
preparing
thing.
food for children too. So
Yes,
it's like,
I guess.
then I'm like, wait, why don't I just do this for myself too? And also we're kind of in like a food desert in
We are,
Elysian.
and then but like it's leading to, and it's been now 8 months in, and I'm still like leave work every day starving because I never like we have snacks sometimes, but I never think to bring my meal. And like meanwhile, like Latif has eaten like 6 meals, and I've been like just sitting there being
3.
like, do we we have peanuts anywhere? Like,
And the problem with when you make your meals yourself, like they're actually healthy. And so there's way less calories in them. So like
sure.
I eat it and I'm like, I'm like immediately hungry after. I'm like, that's why I bring 3.
I admire it, and maybe I will do it soon. Maybe I could pay you to make.
Oh, I can start a food prep,
yeah.
Elysian food prep, skunk prep, with little meals with a little skunk on it.
Oh, that'd be adorable.
So fun.
Yeah.
Are there like ADs that you look up to that are like, oh, this is someone who's really doing like work I admire, or?
Yeah. Yes, I think once again, like I've been lucky that like I've known a lot of different artistic directors, and they've been like very like good counsel to me, whether like actually in real life or just like through like knowing about them. I feel like if you're an artistic director, like that's okay. Erase that part. I just feel like for me, the 2 artistic directors that are like on my vision board are Ellen Stewart, who was La Mama. She ran La Mama Experimental Theater Space on East 4th Street in New York. And I never knew her personally, even though she was like around when I was around in New York City. She's passed away like maybe 10 years ago or so. But everybody talks about Ellen Stewart and they call her Mama. Like everybody talks about her like they just couldn't believe that space that she had, you know, like, and she was able to pull something off in the East Village in that moment where it was just like, I see something in you. Like she didn't, you know, there was no email obviously, but it was all her intuition, and she didn't even necessarily need to see your work, but she would know.
Just by looking at you?
By looking at you.
Like a Jedi.
Or seeing something, like a little something that you did, you know, like, and she'd be like, yes, 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 yes. And also, of course, like sometimes no, but like it all felt still like of like the spirit of generosity and inclusion. And she really worked for those artists, you know, she really like strived to make a home for these artists and if she believed in you, you could do anything, really anything. You know, and she would really work to allow you to do anything. So
it's like,
I mean,
yes, Goldman Sachs.
What?
And you're like, what? I'm here for the theater. No, go. You can do anything.
Yeah, I don't know. So like she, you know, and she was of a time, you know, but I feel like if I can like hold it even like the littlest candle to her in this like new era that we're in, like that would be somewhat of a success. And Joseph Papp, who started the Public Theater in New York, like those are, I think, the 2 kind of like definitive, like by definition, the most amazing, generous, like nonprofit leaders who had a vision and a mission and like made something happen. Those 2.
Do you think that they, like you said that they say yes, 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 but the Mama also said no, no.
And Joseph Papp also said no,
Yeah.
and was like this incredible. I have read his biography, and I'm rereading it now slowly because I have no concentration left. But I was like, I remember when I read this book quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was like also a beast, you know, like a beast. I think like, you know, he has to fight for a mission, and he fought a lot of people. He fought the city, you know, his whole thing was like free Shakespeare in the park. But yeah, he had a lot of friends, and then also, of course, like a lot of enemies or people who were like, "Ah, oh, fuck this guy," you know.
Does that just come with the job? Because to keep a high artistic bar, you have to say no.
Well, I certainly like can't put myself in that camp yet, but I feel like the job of the artistic director like is to tell the story of the space, you know, to hold the mission of the space and to tell that story again and again, and to like refine that story and strengthen that story, but also to make that story known. And the truth is, like, it's not all vision and art. It's like the only way to keep that story going is if you have people who support that story financially. You know, I feel like that's like the quick lesson of anybody running an art space or a performance space where there's high ideals, like that. It's like, yes, there's high ideals, and there's also like the reality is that this is the worst time right now like that we have ever been in.
Like you're talking about theater as the whole. I
think like to be a small performance venue in 2023, it's like, perhaps it's always a hard time. Yeah. But I mean, like all you have to do is look at the news. It's like every day there's like if another one bites the dust, another one bites the dust, another one bites the dust. And I think it's like really important for all of us, like, and I feel like we need as much help as we can get around this, like to form a community that believes in the Elysian and that the Elysian is a bigger thing than anybody, that like everybody has a mission to move it forward despite who's at the leadership or who's in the building, like I feel like the job is that the thing that's happening, the art that's happening at the Elysian, the movement, the electricity that's happening moves forward, but it can only move forward with some like smart decisions and a lot of help from our friends, like
insert QR code for donation right here.
I mean it. I don't like that part of it. Like I would I would love to never have to talk about art and commerce together. Like, right. But like, I don't think we have that privilege. And I think I've really learned like in these months on the job, I think it's really important to talk to everybody about like, the reality behind what makes a space like this go. I think it's important for artists to understand that. And I think it's important for artists to like be part of that equation, in many ways. And artists should be paid, and also like in order for artists to be paid, you have to figure out where that money comes from, and we're not in a position yet. We're heading towards there, but like the Elysian has never, except for when the Elysian began before we came on, like it had the benefit of government funding because of the pandemic, and small businesses, but like we don't have any other grants yet. And that is now like the next step is like finding that. But it's a tough time. I mean, I think everybody's rethinking what structure should be like. I think the model of like nonprofit theaters needs to be rethought. So
yeah, and it's being rethought.
It is being rethought.
Yeah.
Like so. I feel like I've just really been on like a listening tour, and I feel really grateful for so many mentors and so much good counsel. And like lots of differing opinions.
Yeah.
Let me tell you,
lots
of differing opinions about like what the best thing is moving forward. And like, as I've said to you many times and others, like we're all just, or I feel like we're building the plane as we fly it. But I don't know. I really believe, I think it's good. I think good things are happening. I can feel good things are happening.
Trend,
I so believe in the Elysian. I so believe in the artists at the Elysian. I believe that like we'll figure it out. I think LA is a good place to be in, like I think we should feel lucky that we're not in New York right now. I think we should feel lucky that we're like, we have a model that is both like, a true venue model and a theater model. I think that's going to help the Elysian in many ways.
We might have actually created the new model as we're the last one standing. Well, I think you've created a great piece of work here today for future ADs to be like, to listen back on and be like, get inspired by you and what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you, Latif. Yeah. It's like been a pleasure to, have this great adventure with you.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you doing the podcast today.
My pleasure.
And
do I get final edit?
What an artistic director comment. Final cut. You can listen if you'd like. And then also plug your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I feel like in the years before, I went on to this, I was creating a project that was really special to me. It's called It Makes a Sound. It's a 2-season episodic musical fiction podcast. It initially debuted on the Night Vale Presents network, and now it's on Realm. It's about a woman. It's a fiction story, and it's about a woman who returns home to her like sad, abandoned hometown and finds a cassette tape in the attic that is the only like remaining archival piece of this musician named Wim Ferros, and her whole journey is like trying to revive his music and like let his magic be known to a vast audience. And it's like a weird ass like kind of solo show. It starts as a solo piece and then it kind of builds into this like wild, strange, whimsical ensemble piece, and there's fabulous actors and fabulous musicians in it, and we have soundtrack albums. So it was like such a a labor of love to
Yeah.
do that podcast. And it's funny because it's like it was taking up so much of my life and creative time. And podcasting is so strange, you know,
So
like
strange. We're doing it right now.
we're doing it right now, but it's like just out there. So
Yeah. It's being listened to right now.
it is being listened to right now.
That's amazing,
which
yeah.
is lovely, but it's also like, it's a weird medium where
Yeah.
like it's just kind of floating out there.
And your Instagram is at Jacquelyn
Jacquelyn Landgraf.
Landgraf. No,
And just nothing.
No nothing? Perfect.
At Jacquelyn Landgraf.
at Jacquelyn Landgraf at Elysian Theater. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.